exist. And evil can still exist, but God can defeat evil, can overcome evil. And that's the way or the approach we are taking. We don't deny evil. Buddhism, for example, or Eastern mysticism, like Hindus and Buddhism and all these people, Buddhist people, they deny evil. They said there's no such a thing called evil. They said evil is imaginary. It's something you imagine it exists, but actually does not exist. And atheism, they said evil exists, God does not exist. Theism, which is us as Christians or even Muslim or Jews, they approve both. No, we have God and we still recognize evil. So there's no contradictions between God existence and evil existence. No, evil can still exist. One of other reason, I'm going to say some, of course, one, I have a huge presentation about 2 or 3 hours about pain and suffering. So I'm not going to get into details, just to give you the highlights and maybe listen to questions. Another reason for atheism these days that people try to deny existence of God, they said, and this is the quote of this era, they said, we're going to be saved by science, not by God. That's the new era of atheists. They said that our Savior these days is science, it's not God. Jesus is not a Savior. We just imagine this. And he said he's not saving us from anything. So the only thing can save us is, science. And actually, they said in pandemic, the only thing saved people is actually the vaccination. But actually, this is a lie, because vaccination didn't save people. People still die with the vaccination. But they said that's the only thing we can save people. And it's a very dangerous path when we think about science as our savior, because they think, and that's what we call it scientism. Scientism, that's the only knowledge we know is through hard science, like chemistry, physics, biology, all this hard science in the lab. That's the only truth we know. So there's no such a thing called the metaphysics. There's no something called what's beyond physical realm. No, they think just all the knowledge end with the lab and the hard science, and after that we don't, we cannot gain any knowledge of any other, things in life. And actually, this is a self-refuted, statement, because whatever they say cannot prove it in a lab as well. So it's a self-refuted statement when you say there's no knowledge except by hard science. This statement by itself, it's self-refuted, because that statement you're saying, I cannot prove it in a lab. And actually, we challenge them through the evolution, and I'm sure you know about evolution and Darwinism and all this that we teach in the school. Evolution has no proof in the lab. We didn't see facts in front of us. We didn't see this kind of evolution, but we assume this happened. And we try to link it to some fossils or stuff, but even the gaps in the evolution is very big. But they assume things that what we call the philosophy of science, and the philosophy of science and logic cannot be proved by hard sciences. They try as much as they can, but actually the dangerous things about scientism, actually, they even deny the soul. And they said a man doesn't have a spirit or soul. All the phenomena or the high faculty of a human being, it's due to chemical reaction in the brain. They said, whatever you feel, it's chemical reaction. And we can prove that by science. And they said we can hook some machines to your brain and see the brain activity. And we know that there's brain activity due to certain chemical changes in the brain. And of course, by doing this, there's no such thing called spirit anymore. Actually, there are a lot of neurosurgeons, brains in neurosurgeons, they are trying to have conference to prove this, that there's no soul, there's no such a thing called the spirits or soul, everything became a chemical. And even I challenged one time a person, he was telling me that, he told me, I told him, what about artistic taste? And he told me, what you mean? What about music, for example? Why we got touched by music? He started to tell me that this is a chemical reaction. So I challenged him with something very funny. I told him, you know what? In chemistry, we know H2O is water, right? 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen is water all the time. I told him, at any time can get water by another chemical reaction. He said, no. I said, so you agree that every time you have H2O, it's going to come what? Water. You disagree? And he said, no. I said, okay, if it is a chemical reaction in the brain for our musical taste or artistic point of view, it has to be the same for all of us. And then he looked at me, no, but our brain is different. I told him, no, our mind is different, but our brain is the same. The brain function, the brain chemistry is the same for all humans. So I told him, I assume if it is a chemical reaction that bring water for H2 all the time, then the chemical reaction is my brain has to give me the same sensations and the same, perception of anything like all of us. But truly, that's not what happened. Because I like certain music, you like certain music, I like certain idea about art, you have different taste. So we don't all have the same taste. Even for food, when you taste something and you like it, I was reading a book and it said people sometimes have a flavor of chocolate mousse, for example, cake. And I'd like to take the chocolate mousse cake and I have certain crave for it and have certain feeling when I'm eating it. Another person hated it, doesn't like it. So it doesn't mean all of us have the same taste. Why? What happened? And don't tell me I have a bad experience. No, because that's not the case. If we have a chemical reaction in a brain, then we all have to have the same feeling, the same taste, the same perception about beauty and about art and about everything. But that's not exactly what is happening in reality. So the idea of chemical brain D is not happening. And the other things, the conscience in the brain itself, that we feel things, is not accessible by any machine unless I give the machine an idea and access to what I'm thinking of. And if they connect something to my brain and see some activity, electrical activity happen in the brain, they cannot understand what exactly I'm thinking of. And after the experiment, they have to ask the person or the subject what you were thinking about. How did you feel? What were you imagining? What you feel then? I'm the only one have access to it. No machine can have. That's something very private. So all the conscience, the thinking, all the ideas, it's owned by me. No one can get it. So no chemical reaction, no machine, no electric machine, nothing like that happen even in the memory. Even certain feelings about a memory. I'm thinking about something, make me feel sad. Or I'm thinking about something else, make me feel happy. Who knows exactly what's in my memory? Only me. So no one can access this except my own, and this is coming from conscience, spirit, and that's different than any other, human beings or any other creatures. So the idea of feeling that conscience is a chemical reaction is very deceiving idea, because actually that wasn't proven at all. The dangerous part also about this, that they said we don't have any proof for next life. And they said, there's no proof, scientific proof about next life. How we know that there's something called heaven? How can we prove that? And it's a very challenging question, of course, because they said, how we know that is there's life after death. And we all believe life is just the end and the grave, and there's nothing beyond graves can continue or sustain. There's no other life afterward. And actually, I was attending many conferences about this, and now the near-death experience, or people died and came back from heaven, it became a proof of heaven because of this. In the past almost 30 or 40 years, from the 80s till now, we have 14 million documented cases, scientifically proven that they were dead and they came back to life. And there's a society called NDE, Near Death Experience, and you're going to see a lot of videos on the YouTube about this and people that experience this. And the thing we know, it's true for many things. First of all, they describe stuff out of the body experience that no one else know about it unless you are seeing it from, another dimension. For example, like people died, when we died, they said, when we died, we saw people when they recitate us, in the things, and they describe exactly who was there and who wasn't. And they give person detail. One of them give details about a name tag of manufacturer in one of the machines in the very top of the surgery room, close to the ceiling, so no one can see this. And when she came back and she told them, I saw this red sticker in this machine in the top and written so-and-so in it. And then when they verified, they found it's true. And no one, of course, climbed the stairs to go up in the top of these machines to read, whatever mark in this sticker. And the way described heaven, it's match exactly the Bible, either the book of Revelation or the Epistle of Paul. So there's a lot of them describe many things. For example, they said we see shapes and colors that we cannot describe because there's nothing like it on earth. And that's exactly what Paul said, and what an eye has not seen nor ear heard. And they heard the music in heaven, and they said something of tune and some harmony. Whenever, heard something like that ever in our earthly life. And even the way he described heaven, it's exactly like John said it in the book of Revelation, and how described Christ himself when they met him. Some of them met him, some of them did not. But they describe things in very detail. And the good things about it, a lot of them, they have a life-changing experience after they came back for better. So this is not something bad happened, but in contrary, when they came back, they became very good people. And even they became so careless about any materialistic things on earth. They don't look for money, they don't look for homes, they don't look for cars. They said all this doesn't matter, and we're just looking forward to go back to heaven. And they started, even people, some of them, they were very rich, and they were starting investing in charity program and helping poor and helping some organizations, and they have really life-changing experience. And when we have this amount of cases documented scientifically, that was a very good proof that those people died. And actually, I encourage you to watch many movies on YouTube. One of them called The Perfect Wave, for example, about the surfer from New Zealand, and he was an atheist, actually. He was baptized when he was young as a Catholic, and his mom and dad was very devout Catholic, and he said, God is not for me, And he was surfing for water, and then one day he came to his parents and he told them, you know what, I'm leaving home. Where are you going? And he was young, he was in 20s. He said, my friend and I, we decided to go search for the perfect wave to slide on it. And he was a professional, surfer. So he was traveling all over the world, tried to find, and of course he commit a lot of sins. He get to know a girl, and he has a relationship with her, and he started taking drugs, and he was really not there. And then he went finally to Mauritius in Africa, because they told him in the coast in the front of Mauritius, they have the highest wave in that time. So he went there, and then the night before the storm came, he decided with his friend to dive in the night to catch some lobsters. So they went, all of them, and he got bit by a poison jellyfish, 5 of them. So when he screamed and they took him out, and then when they took him out, he just went to the hospital and he died in a way to the hospital. And they tried, everything in the hospital, and, they lost him. And even the nurse there was just putting the tag in his toes to take him, to the fridge. And while she pulling him to do that, and he died for almost 45 minutes. And then when she took him to pull him to go back to the fridge, he came back. And of course, you'd like to see the movie, and the nurse, of course, was scared, and she was screaming. She found a dead man, coming. And after that, before that, when he died, they found a straight line in a heart and in a brain. And what happened to him, he went first to Hades, he went to hell. And he found the whole hell is dark, and he can't even see anything. And he remembered one thing, that his mom told him, no matter what happened to you, call, on Jesus, and he's going to come and rescue. So he was in hell trying to, to cry for Jesus and said, I believe in you, forgive me, forgive me, forgive me. And he found like a hand came, took him from hell to heaven, and he was facing Jesus face to face. And then he said, I saw all my life like in a 3D movie, everything I have done in my life since I was a child till now. And he was confessing, even I took drugs, I did this, I did this, I did that. And then he said Christ didn't even judge him or anything, but he told him one question, you want to go back or you want to stay? So he looked and he found his mom crying and, screaming for him. Then he told him, no, I want to go back. I told him, yeah, you go back, but you're going to tell people that heaven is real and I am real and all whatever is said in the Bible is real. And then he showed him even people like didn't recognize him from a distance. And he told him, who are they? And then he said, they are the people I died for, and they don't step in a church and they're denying me. So go back and tell them I love them and I want them back to church. So he came back, and his life after that changed. He became a pastor in England. And the good things is, in the end of the movie, they got the real person, not an actor. And he came and he said, I am so and so and so, and that's what happened to me. And they show even the medical record in the end of the movie, and the hospital, and the doctors, and the nurses, and everything. And they had many YouTube interview with him, telling people his experience and explains in detail what happened to him and that. So when we have, as I said, almost 14, and some people even, if we add the people that they were not died completely, but they have some experience like out of body, that they were like, for example, losing conscience in a table in a surgery room or something like that. But they didn't die completely, but they eliminate that. He said, what we add those people, we're going to reach almost 20 million people, documented that they have out-of-body experience, that they saw the heaven, and they came back and witnessed a lot of things. So we use this lately as, an evidence that there's heaven, because when we have documented cases like that, it's proof there's something. And one of them actually is very good. You can check it also in YouTube, for a neurosurgeon. His name Eben. I don't know what's his first name, but last name is Eben. And he didn't believe in this. And he said, he said the same thing. It's just only chemical reaction when people coming back to life, till it happened to him. He was playing tennis one day and came back home, and then he found his back was hurting him. And then his wife told him, maybe you just you exhaust your back while you're playing. So he said, just get a hot shower and you're going to feel better. Then he did. when he came out of the shower, he lost consciousness and he fell down on earth and on the floor. And they came and took him to the hospital. And because he's a famous surgeon, he's a Harvard graduate, and he was one of the people that they do a lot of conference in brain. And he said he used to believe that all this is just only imagination and people imagine things. Till he actually, when they rushed him to the hospital, they found that he has like a lot of bacteria in his brain liquid. So they took sample from that and they analyzed, and they said he has no chance. He has only 4 or 5 days. We give him antibiotic, but they said even if the 4th day didn't cure, we have to pull the antibiotic and let him go. And his wife brought some ladies from the church. His wife was a really good believer, so she brought people and they were praying for him. And the 4th day, when they tried to pull the antibiotics from him, he came back. And he asked them one question. He told him, why my mom wasn't with you while you're praying around my body? And they told him, how did you know? And he said, because when I came back, I saw you. And mom wasn't there. Why mom didn't come? And his mom was a very religious. He told him mom was really have almost nervous breakdown, and she couldn't come because she couldn't like, to see him dying in this way. But he said, mom wasn't there. And I saw all of you holding hand together, praying, but mom wasn't there. And after that, he wrote a book and actually took the revenue from this book, gave it to charity. He's a very rich guy, so he didn't need the money. But he described heaven, and he described the being, even like an angel, taking him from place to another to show him heaven. And then when he reached a certain level, he found a lot of light. And he said, I want to go there. And the angel told him, no, this is when you come back permanently and you stay there. But now you have to go back to earth and tell people about what you witnessed. But when you come back next time, you're going to be upgraded to that level, to where the light is, and you're going to be there. So we have a lot of other things, to document that there is life after the Taban. For us, we are believers, so we know there's heaven and we know there's life. But for an atheist, when you told him the Bible said that, he said, I don't believe in Bible here, right? So we use these things in to prove for people other way than just biblical things. Of course, one thing I would like to tell you, when somebody asks you, especially your kids, about stuff like this, you need to not to use the Bible a lot. Try to use logic, philosophy, and just historical evidence, stuff like that. Because definitely when you try to use the Bible as a beginning, they always said you're biased, but they taught us in the school, Bible is not true. So when you try to go in this route with them, they're going to be more argumental and they tell you no. But when we start to find that they are reasoning and they start to believe, then we use the Bible in a later stage. But in the beginning, try to challenge their mind and avoid telling them, oh, we know this by faith. Because when you tell them about this, you actually think that you're insulting their intellectual, because faith is blind. But our faith is not blind. Our faith is open and we understand. Paul said, I know what I'm believing in. So we understand exactly what we're believing in, and we're really sure of what we're believing in. But atheists always accuse us that we have only blind faith and a leap of faith, that we jump in something unknown, and that is not true. So try to avoid using this, especially for teenage or young youth, because they think intellectually, and when they try to think like that and tell them that, take it by faith, you said, you're not convincing me. You're not telling me something. If I need something, I can, understand and comprehend and feel it's mind challenging. So try to always use other resources, and that needs homework from you, that you need to read a lot, need to see what's the update, what people thinking about, and how to answer this. I think I talked too much, so I don't want to talk more, but I need to hear your questions. Sarah, go ahead. Yeah, they were given second chance. Yeah.
So after death, do we have second chance? Like,
No, we don't. That's some choosing people. God choose them, but not everybody have the second chance to come back to life.
yeah, but how can we reply to this question?
What's that?
How can we reply to this question? Like, what's our proof that there is no second chance after death?
Because there's no proof. The proof and the burden of proof lying in them. Proof for me that there is. Taban, you're referring to something that Eastern mysticism, they always say that's the reincarnation. You know what the word reincarnation? That people come back in a different way, and if you're a good person, you're going to come in a man. If you're a bad person, you're going to be an insect, a roach or something, or a mice or something. I read something very funny yesterday, actually, on YouTube. They said a lady from Cambodia, she has a bull in her backyard, and she watched him and stuff, and they told him, why doing this? He said, I believe that my husband who died, he came back in a form of this bull. And, you know, she's worship him and bathing him and feeding him. And he said, this ball is exactly acting like my husband. And people have said, what happened to people? But that's actually going along with Buddhism, because Buddhism is God is all and all is God. So they believe, when they come back, they can come back in a different form of life. So if you're a bad person, you're going to come back in a form of insects or whatever, any animals or even roaches or insects or whatever. But if you're a good person and you're lucky, maybe you can come back in a different life. But there's no proof about this. I have a very challenging book talking about this, that the people claim they came from different life and they found they are crooks and they're just doing this, just to gain some money. And they found that some of them even they are devil possessed, or some of them even they are just read about something and they claim they are the same person to grab attention. One of them was a young boy, and he said, I came from different life and century.
Right.
And when they discovered after that, he was reading a book about this person, and then he's tried to imitate that person and said, I'm the same person, but actually there was no proof about this. There's a big scandals about this for a lot of people, that they claim they came from different life. They discover later on that it's all just fake. It's not true at all. Mm-hmm. Other questions? Go ahead.
She's telling him there's no proof that Adam and Eva existed, and there's no proof that God exists, and that the ancestors were monkeys.
I tell you a funny story about this monkey thing. One time I was in the Natural History Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C., that they have like fossils of dinosaurs and apes and stuff like that. So I was taking my tour the whole day, watching and learning and stuff. And at the end of the day, they have a movie and about evolution, about how Earth started and stuff like that. So I went to the theater, and then I found it was dark. The movie started already, and there's no even one spot available. It was so crowded. And then a guy looked at me, and he found like I'm a priest, so out of respect, he told me, Father, there's just one chair right there. You can go and sit. I said, okay. But I was wondering why this is the only chair, people are standing, why this is the only chair available in the theater. I didn't pay attention, and I was sitting, and I thought next to me is another guy. Then the movie continued, and in the end of the movie, when lights came on, I found that was next to me is a statue of a monkey. So he tried to tell me, you came from this. I said, oh my God, I feel so insulted. That's why people didn't sit in this chair, because they don't like, to sit next to the monkey. And of course, the whole movie tried to give us an idea that we came from this guy. So it was, I look at it, I said, oh my God, if I only, would known that this is the monkey next to me, I wouldn't sit next to the monkey telling me that this is my father and your grandfather. But that's, was really sad. So there is a good book called Who Was Adam? And this book actually was a fruit of 10 years research. They took DNAs from all human races, even people in the Eskimos. people from different tribes in Africa, from Asia, from Europe, from Arabs, from Japan, from everywhere in the world. And they did the research by scientists. One of them actually worked in NASA, his name Heros. And then they got the result in the end. And they found by the DNA research that all human race came from one person near east. And they said that was matching the Bible. And they said actually the age of Adam, close to 80,000 years or 100,000 years. Between that, there's error gap. And they said even the Bible didn't mention all the generations, because the Bible said there's Adam married and has another kids, but they didn't say who are. So the race we have in the Bible only just mentioned few of them to give us, the identity of Christ, but not all of them. And actually, I was reading also another book by a guy named Steve Meyer, that's a scientist in the DNA, and he's a professor in Washington State in Seattle. Washington State University, and he has also a book about Darwinism and another thing called Signature on a Cell about the DNA. And he said even the Homo sapiens sapien, that's they believe humans, they are no older than 100,000 years. And all the scientists, even the atheists, still believe in this. And this was about millions and millions that they talk about it. It said, this is very challenging, so we don't say that. I'm going to tell you a story about this. You can Google it even. They said in 1930 something or 23 something, I'm not sure about the date, but you can Google it. In the Natural History Museum in London, two scientists, they tried to fake a fossil. And they got a real human tooth from a person, from a dead person, implanted cleverly in one of the fossils to prove that there is a missing link between the apes and human being. Unfortunately, people believed it. And it stayed in this fossil for 30 years, people making master degrees and PhD degrees from that fossil, believing that they found the missing link between apes and human being. Till a very honest scientist came in 1953, they discovered that was a fake tooth. And it was recent human tooth. Was taken from a man, recent man, and they cleverly implanted in this fossil to prove that there is one. They took this fossil from the Museum of London, and they canceled all the PhDs and the master that was actually done on this fossil, because they said whatever built on a lie is a lie, so they cannot take it. So they took it back, and even they canceled the membership of those scientists and their degrees, and it was a huge scandal in the Natural Museum of History in London. You can Google it, and it give you the name of the scientists and the exact date and everything, and it was very common. So a lot of these fossils, a lot of this stuff, actually it's fake stuff, done by some atheists. They would like to prove that there's no God and there's no Adam and Eve, and we all came from those apes and monkeys and all these things.
That's why you cannot believe the scientists 100%, because they're humans and they might do something like that to prove.
There is a good
It's
book
hard.
by Norma Geisler. Norma Geisler is one of the leading advocate for Christianity. He died like a few years ago. His son now is taking his ministry in South Carolina, I think, or North Carolina. He has a very good book called "I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist." I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. And one of the chapters, he talked about good science and bad science. And he have this example for this Natural History Museum in London and other things too, that some scientists, they got paid from some atheists. They tried to let them deny God and prove that even like homosexuality, for example, is something for the genes and we cannot fight it and all this stuff. to make things, يعني legitimate for the young generation. That's why he said you have to be careful who you're reading to. يعني أنا sometimes لما يجي واحد somebody try to tell me, for example, oh, I read this and this scientist said say whatever. I told him which book and what is the name of the scientist. And I Google that person, and sometimes I see a lot of challenging and a lot of talk about this science that they're talking about. So we have to be careful what we read and how we read and who is that person. Because some of them, they use science manipulated in an evil way to prove something else. So we have to be very careful. And we have to teach our kids to read this and to understand that there's an answer. For example, one of the leadest atheists in the world, his name Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins is an atheist and is in Oxford, I think, teaching there. And he has a good book called The God's Delusion. And this book, I think he sold like 1 million copies of it or something. And that book actually promoted atheism in the whole world. In a matter of fact, I was in Egypt one time, and they teach this in the German university in Cairo in a philosophy class, and confused a lot of people. One of them even with a priest's son. And Abouna gave me his son. He told me, Abouna, talk to him because they really, confused my son. And he told him, Dad, I'm start losing my faith because of this book. And it was a very evil book. And Richard Dawkins himself, when you listen to him, even on YouTube, he's very rude and very impolite. And I always making fun of Christian and priests and the Bible and stuff. And he's so bad. But there's another guy named Alistair McGrath. He is also professor in Oxford University, and he's a very good Christian. He had another book called the Dawkins Delusion, not God's Delusion. He said the Dawkins, that guy, delusion. And he answered all that book for the God's Delusion, and it's a very, very powerful book, actually. So, and of course, Richard Dawkins tried, he was promoting the idea that science is the only way to save us, and there's no soul, there's no conscience, there's no all these things, and there's no even purpose in life. Our life is, we live in a purposeless life, and we're gonna die like any insects. Life is gonna end right there. So life is very depressing. He said even when you listen to this guy, you feel that you want to commit suicide after that because there's no purpose to live after you listen to Richard Dawkins.
Father, there's a notion, especially for the young kids, especially here. They teach them, or the norm is Christianity is for people who are weak, people that don't work hard. Instead of working hard, they pray.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a belief in that, especially for the young kids. And the other question I get most of the time from non-believers is, if God knows us very well, why is He creating us? Especially now we have almost 8 billion. Why is He creating all these creatures if we're not gonna follow? I mean, if He knows us very well, why is He creating us like this so that we can fail?
There's a good philosophical argument about this. Definitely being is different than non-being. Right? To be exist never better than not to be exist. That's a very simple statement. You wouldn't like, one time I was in an apologetic conference in Egypt with Abouna Daoud Lamai, and a guy from the American University came and asked me, I'm so mad for what you call it God. I said, oh, why that? And he said, look at the silly idea. He didn't take my opinion to create me. And I looked at the guy, I said, okay. First, the question, it's self-refuted. How you not exist, and he's going to take your opinion to be exist when you're not existed anyways. So I told him, you know what? You don't like your wife? He said, no, I hate it. I told him, why don't you commit suicide and die? And then he looked at me and he said, what? I said, yeah, since you don't like your wife life that bad, and you really blame God for bringing it up, well, you have the choice to end your life. I mean, I never expected from a priest to tell me this. I said, what you'd like me to tell you? To agree that God doesn't take your opinion before He created you? Then he started to laugh, and then he told me, I'm just, don't like my, there's a lot of things I've told him, yeah, I hear you. But it doesn't mean we blame God for created us because there's things in life is bad. Yeah, we all have way or another certain difficulty in life, but it means we don't hate life. Definitely life is better, being is better than non-being. And the other things, the problem in the world is not because of God, but because of absence of God. And that is the opposite defense for that they put in our kids' mind. And what we have now in the world is the absence of God. That's what's causing all the problem, not because of God that all these problems. So actually, this is taking totally opposite direction to the solution. The solution, if we really, believe in God and in the Bible and go exactly by the book, then things is going to be a lot different in our life. And the other thing, when they said Christianity for weak people and we need to work, says who that Christianity said don't work? Even there's a verse in the Bible that said whoever doesn't want to work, he shouldn't eat. Right? This is the verse in the Bible. الذي لا يريد أن يعمل فلا يأكل أيضا. يعني Christianity never encourages us to be a lazy bums. That's not what Christianity is. And actually, there's also a very good book. I don't remember who is the author now, but I read this book that Christianity actually changed the whole face of the world. Hospitals done by Christian people, even in Alexandria in Egypt. Even the people who invented the idea of nursing home that won John Chrysostom in Constantinople. And people even for like the hospice care, it said was invented by Cyril of Alexandria in the 4th century to bring nurses and people who take care of people till they died. And even a lot of science and a lot of things was by Christian people. For example, go like a lot of physicians, like Pascal, for example, in French scientist. He was a very good Christian. Newton, Galilei, Copernicus, all these people used to be very good Christian. Says who that Christianity encourages us to be a lazy bum and don't live and don't develop the word? No, they did. Graham Bell, all these people, they were very good Christians. So Christianity does not limit our brain and let us live on earth like an ignorant or people, know nothing that they claim. That's not totally true. And I have a list of them. I don't remember them in the top of my head right now, but there's I have a list of a lot of scientists, a lot of people that changed the face of history, and they were truly a Christian. Even Einstein himself, when he started in the beginning to be an agnostic at the end of his life, when he started to believe, he said, no, there is a designer from the world, and some humility is required to understand that we are in the presence of a great designer, that he did the whole world, and he created this world. He used even the word created. Because there's something else about Einstein, I don't know if you know about it. Einstein did a big mistake in his life. You know what's his mistake, or you don't? You know what's Einstein's mistake? That he regret himself to the end till he died, and he was depressed about it. Einstein, in the beginning, he thought that the whole world is eternal, that he's always exist, and there's no beginning of the world. So the earth was always there, like God. So in 1935, I think, or 32, if you visit Los Angeles, here near Hollywood, there's something called Griffith Observatory. It's like a telescope in a Mount Wilson. And Griffith was a British guy. He came and he donated this hill to the state. And they built the biggest telescope ever. And we have a scientist, his name Hubble, that they named the Hubble telescope after him. He came from UCLA and he was watching in the telescope. It was the biggest telescope on Earth in that time. And he found the whole universe is expanding. So it was not stationary. So he called Einstein. Einstein used to live in New Jersey. So he told him the whole universe is expanding. And he found that from the redshift in the stars by Doppler effect. So when he sees that, Einstein in the beginning mocked him, because Einstein was very, cocky about himself, that he said, what are you talking about? And he said, no, the whole universe is expanding. So he started work on the equation and stuff, and he sent it to Einstein. When Einstein saw it in a paper, he said, yes, it looks fine, but how to prove this? And I told him, come and you watch, with the telescope with me, and then you will decide what I'm talking about. So Einstein flew from New Jersey and came to California, and he went to Mount Wilson, and he discovered that Hubble was right. And he said, I was wrong. But he has the humility to say, I was wrong. And he wrote after that, correct his equation about the relativity theory, and he said, yes, the whole world is expanding, which does mean if we go back in time, then the whole world was starting from a beginning, and time was created when time was zero. That's the universe when the universe was created. And of course, start to believe in God, because whoever created time is a timeless, and if he's a timeless, then he's not changing, and if he's a timeless and not changing, this is not material, then it's another spiritual being, is not like a human being. So that's why he started to correct his view about God, and in the end of his life, he believed that God existed and he's a designer, that he created the whole world. Go ahead.
Issue.
Okay.
Like kids born with diseases and they
Okay.
don't stay long and they pass away.
Mhm.
And things like that are very emotional for the kids,
Mhm.
And so if God loved the children, why is he watching them suffer and not even live long enough in this world? Is my issue at home.
Pain and suffering has two approaches. One of them is emotional, that we comfort the person who has pain and suffering with God's love and God's mercy. And we understand if God's allowed pain to happen for a better reason, and if the better reason is not on earth, it's going to be in heaven. We understand there is with a guy who's suffering all his life, and in heaven, he was in God's bosom, and the other rich guy that he was not. So even if allow things to happen, that for any reason. And sometimes, C.S. Lewis said, pain and suffering is the megaphone that God sometimes is screaming it to point our heads toward eternal life, because we understand that, life on earth is fragile and is not true, and that we're going to live forever. So we're going to end up have an end of our suffering, either here or there. And sometimes when God allows to carry a cross, that's common with Christianity, because he said Christ himself suffered. So if Christ himself suffered, then it is not strange for us to suffer. But that's the emotional part. But there's a rational part that's too hard. I don't want to, say it now. But there's a rational part that we all deserve suffering because we're all sinners. Right? But we don't like to say that for people who have suffering. That's between us only. Okay? What other question? I was in a conference about this pain and suffering with Biola University. The teacher surprised us with a very harsh question. He said, I want to tell you something, because people ask him why pain and suffering and how we answer them. He said, let me ask you this. If you hear a child abuser and criminal did something bad and he got sentenced to death, do you feel bad for this person? And we said, no, he deserved it. I said, well, this is my answer. So we looked at him and we said, we got, surprised from the answer. What do you mean? And he said, don't all human race deserve pain and suffering for all what we did in life and what we're doing to Christ, and we do it now? And he started back, give us a list about 100 years what human race did to themselves. And he said, if the whole human race is corrupted, and like the Bible said, then pain and suffering is not that bad, because we can cry out with the right thief and said, we are justifiably punished because we deserve what we did. But that's the very harsh approach, and I would like you to think about this.
Thank you, Abouna, for your presentation. And I have a couple of questions. Sometimes we have a challenge with our kids to convince them with the Trinity, the concept of the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And actually, some Christians don't have answers to this as well. And definitely atheism attack this part. So how in simple way to convince kids about this?
I did a huge presentation about Trinity. I'll be more than happy if one time, if you invite the kids, I can come and explain it for them. It was revised even by Metropolitan Bishoy before he died, and he took copy of it, and he told me, Abouna, this is a very good and challenging for the kids, and it's very nice. It's all in English. So I'll be more than happy to do it anytime you want. Definitely, Trinity goes back with logic, because if there's no Trinity, I'll give you one thing, it's like wisdom, for example. You need a wise, a wisdom, and a spirit of wisdom. Or love, need a lover, loved man, or loved object, and a spirit of love. So these three always complete each other and give us a concept of a lot of things. But that's a very simple way to do it. But there's more to it, and then we can really explain it well with the kids whenever, you guys are ready. I'll be more than happy to do it for you.
Thank you.
Sure.
And the other question is about Christian denominations. So the kids ask why you are right, why you think the Orthodoxy is the right way, because there is so many.
Well, between denomination, we all agree on one thing, about the Trinity, about the salvation, about Christ's existence. We disagree about the way we worship and we believe in some stuff, but in the basic things of Christianity, there's no big difference. We all believe Christ came, died for us, redeemed us, saved us, died in a cross. We all believe in the Father and the Son and Holy Spirit, either Protestant, Catholic, whatever denomination, except the taban cults like Mormonism or Jehovah's Witness and stuff like that. Those we don't consider them Christian anyways. So, and actually in the book of the World Council of Churches, they don't list them as Christians. They list them as a cult. So we understand that part. But in the basic things of Christianity, we all believe in the same core of Christianity, all of us. The difference, and about what happened, it has a historical background. And we have to teach the kids to search in history, to say what the motive that made, churches split and many denominations happen, and what is the danger of this. And now, if you Google it now, we have more than 30,000 denominations. And they all stem from the Protestant church. So we have to understand that, to search for the truth. Truth has a very philosophical statement. A, it will never be non-A. Right? That's a very simple statement. A cannot be non-A, either A or non-A. So I can't say Christ was born from a virgin, a state virgin, and instead, no, she wasn't virgin. Either she's a virgin or non-virgin. We cannot say we all in this thing. We can believe that this is a true body and the blood of Christ, and said no, is not, is a symbolic thing. Either or. So the Bible is very rich to give us an history of the church. Because who was first, the church or the Bible? Church, right? Church was, was established before the Bible. So we go back in the history of the church and see what things happened in the first few centuries and what happened before even the Bible was written, and we have a very solid argument about what we believe is right. And of course, denominations happen. I tell you a very simple answer you can say to your kids. If I'm go out right now and I see an accident in this parking lot, okay? And 15 years passed, and people would like to know what happened in this parking lot. Who the honest person will explain exactly what happened? Definitely me, right? Because I was an eyewitness to what happened in a parking lot. So no one come after 15 years and said, I have a different explanations about what happened in a parking lot. No, you don't have the right even to claim that, because I'm an eyewitness, so what happened in a parking lot. So who is the eyewitness? I believe the disciples in the first generation that saw Christ and delivered faith for us, or Martin Luther after 15 centuries has come and said, I have different explanation about what happened in the first century. Does that make sense? As simple as that.